Welcome to the Maui Real Estate Radio Show with your host, Clint Hansen. Aloha, Clint.
Aloha. How are you doing, Cindy?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you this morning. A lot of talk about real estate going to be happening here and a lot of information. And I'm going to have the chance to talk to you a little bit about your amazing real estate history.
I've been on island 28 years, but of course I was a keiki when I moved out here, so I haven't had my license that entire time, but I have had my license for 17 years. I come from a real estate family. Most people know my family, Bob and Donna Hansen. They are the matriarchs, and my mom has had her license for over 40 years.
Wow.
My dad has had his for, over 35, and I've had mine for 17. Broker in charge for our brokerage. We were with some other brokerages over time, but we've created our own, and we like to cater to, our listings as well as buyers that are coming to the island, and our websites is one of the largest draws associated with Maui real estate. Most people, when they Google Maui real estate, which is the key search term, come to mauirealestate.net, and we've had that since 1997, so we've been a long foundation for people, and with the online community becoming bigger and bigger, and most people finding their property online, they're often finding us first. That being said, we're branching out. Now we're going to be doing the regular radio show here at 11:10 a.m., 98.7 FM and 96.7 FM. You can always go to mauirealestateradio.com, which will go to this blog and podcast for downloading and listening to when you're on the go. But most people are using our website, mauirealestate.net. I wanted to talk a little bit today about some of the 101s associated with buying real estate in Maui.
There's really so much to learn, and the thing is interesting to me is I bought property from your mom and dad.
Nice, so yeah.
Years ago, I got one at the Grand Champions, one of the very first pieces of property I got here, and that exact question came up: is where do you land up buying first when you move here? Where do you go first, and then how do you decide where you do want to go? And I know some people rent first, or some people these days do what you explained last week in your real estate show. They do the math, and they realize, well, gosh, renting these days doesn't necessarily make sense, so where do I buy?
And it usually doesn't. I mean, there's a lot of benefits associated, especially if you listen to the last podcast. Every case is individual on whether or not it's best to rent or purchase, but there's a lot of incentives associated with purchasing a property. You get write-offs on the interest if you have a loan. Your mortgage payment is like paying yourself and building equity and savings for the future as opposed to paying somebody else's mortgage. And it is one of the biggest and best investments that most people make throughout their life. And there's a lot of places that people choose to purchase, and for a whole variety of reasons. And again, that's one of the things I want to talk about. You mentioned Grand Champions. It's kind of funny. We have a listing that we just put pending.
I hope it's not the one I sold for way too cheap a long time ago.
That's the thing. Maui's always been, you should have been here yesterday. The prices were so much lower, and it goes and up and up and up because.
Well, I'll tell you what I paid for it back then, and you'll go, oh, you should have held on.
Right?
Yeah, I paid $268,000. Don't.
That's like right about when it was new,
Yes, it was.
And right next to the tennis courts, central
Yep.
to Wailea, it had, all the best features that people are looking for. But ours that we just put was a one-bedroom, two-bath. What was yours, a two?
It's two.
Yeah. Ours, it's nice. It was prime frontal, unit 151. It was a one-bedroom, two-bath, 908 square feet. One of the big, issues that we come into when listing something that's vacation rentable like that complex is the fact that, they're rented. People that are renting out the unit typically don't want to show it, and we respect them. We're really good at working with management companies or with the renters themselves. And in this case, I actually bribe them. It's not beneath me to pass a couple of cash cards their way to let us in there and, get them having an extra Mai Tai or two at happy hour. And that's what happened in this situation. They purchased this property sight unseen, and that is a large part due to our Matterport camera that we have. it actually, in addition to the professional photographs that we always take when we get these listings, we use this 3D camera that allows people to virtually walk through the place.
Wow.
Actually, it's amazing science. It uses light-emitting radar and creates a 3D model of the entire unit. So you can actually throw that into a CAD program if you wanted and redesign it. Of course, in a condo, you're not going to be doing that for a home.
But really, you buy a place unseen because you can
Lots
see
of people
it on.
are, yeah.
That's amazing.
And that's one of those things. It's important to have as many tools as possible. So we're creating videos and professional photographs, but I'll get into that later. Mostly, I wanted to talk to and reach out to the buyers specifically.
Yeah.
And buying here in Hawaii really, again, depends on what the person's looking for. And people are like, oh, I want a strong financial, investment. And rates of return are typically poor here. There are certainly many opportunities that you have good rates of return. Grand Champions is actually one of them. It does depend on the kind of rate of return, and typically it's a lot stronger on the mainland. I actually have a saying that I try to tell people: if you want to make a small fortune in Maui, come with the large one.
Well, I know that one.
People are typically buying here because they want to live here. They want to spend, several months out of the year. And, it's a good place to put your money. It's, we have good equity and we have the best weather in the world. And, it's huge draws. But at the end of the day, investments is something in the back of somebody's mind. They're looking to protect their, assets. They're not looking to really get a great rate of return. But that being said, let's start with those 101s on where somebody wants to buy. And it does, it's based off somebody's personal and where they're coming from. If they're a local, what their socioeconomic situation is, if they're working here, where they work, what their health situation is, hobbies, community, and of course, weather. I think health is a big one.
It is.
Especially with the aging baby boomers. A lot of times they're looking for, specific properties that are, close to community. Things are walking distance. They're looking for a single family home, or as a lot of the mainlanders call it, rancher style. And sometimes if they have some ailing problems, they want to be closer to the hospital. So they're looking, Wailuku Heights or Maui Lani area. And it's funny, I think that the Maui Lani Wailuku Heights is one of the best areas, especially for the local people of the island, because it's so central to all of the amenities and infrastructure that Maui has to offer.
You're
and
describing
work.
me.
Yeah.
When I first actually rented here, it was out in Huelo before I bought. And I was way out and lived way out. It's
beautiful.
And now, I lived in Wailuku Heights, and then I just lived above Baldwin on that lovely house on a private road there. And now I live in Maui Lani. So, and you know what? You're right. Now I don't want to drive for 45 minutes to get to work, and I do like the convenience. And I never thought I would, 25, 30 years ago.
And one of my clients is an engineer for a telecommunications company on the island, and she was, Kihei, it's got to be Kihei.
Yeah.
And this is where I am, this is my family, and, I love it. And, she ended up looking at her socioeconomic situation and her particular, place, and really her affordability put her at New Traditions. And the funny thing is, as soon as she bought in New Traditions, she was
where's
like...
New Traditions?
New Traditions is right in the heart of Maui Lani. They're smaller properties.
Okay.
I actually just sold her place at 209 Alake. So 209 Alake is one of the bigger square footage complexes or units there, but it's still tiny by comparison. It's 1,331 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath. It actually feels a lot larger than that 13. It feels more like 1,500 square feet. It's got some taller ceilings. Biggest plus, and I think the most important thing on Maui, especially if you live here, garage. 2-car garage. It's separated. I do like a lot of different complexes that have a duplex situation where they have an adjoining wall, a shared responsibility between the two units. They get yards, things of that nature, but these are nice because they're standalone. And she, purchased, and it's gone up dramatically. We were able to sell it at $610,000.
It's a good price.
Yeah, but it is kind of a minimum accommodation by comparison to some of the other homes, like in the Legends. I sold quite a few in there. Actually, all of the same floor plan, which is close to 1,900 square feet. Really sought after 4-bedroom with the master on the ground floor. But to get back to New Traditions, when she moved out there, she was absolutely in love. It's close to her work. It's a few minutes away. The school's across the street. She's got a park there. She made all these new friends. And like in Kihei, you're a little bit more disconnected. There's not as many paths. There's not central park areas. I mean, it was built at a time where they were just trying to throw stuff up and get it together. Where you're getting into the center of Kahului and the Maui Lani area, and things are like brand new. It almost feels like Wailea, the way that they have the trees and the shade and the walking paths and the commercial
I
districts.
love the walking paths. I mean, I use them all the time. The stratas are beautiful. They really are very lovely walking paths. And 5 minutes to work, 5 minutes to the Queen Kaumanu Center. I mean, it's amazing how that convenience factor does, especially if you start getting into traffic and people when they're visiting, you avoid all that. You don't get the heavy traffic of visitors, And Kihei's changed. You've seen this.
Very much so.
You've seen this. You have a lot of properties out there, in luxury properties right off Kihei, and I remember the house out there for sale by the down south on South Kihei for a long time. I loved it down there. And I think your family owned a house. I think Donna actually had a house down there on South Kihei. A lovely home there for a while, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're not just dealers, we're users too.
Oh, absolutely.
We sell a lot of real estate, but we also purchase a lot of different properties as time goes on. When 2010 was rolling around, we saw opportunities, and we always try to convince our clients when we see those good buys come up, but sometimes you can't, and we jumped on quite a few of them at that time, and since then, they've gone up dramatically in value, and it's one of those rare things that may never happen again.
It went up how much? It went from the average median price is around 470 back then.
Yeah,
and then it's gone up to like 750 or 760 now.
Well,
I think.
Yeah, it depends on the region that you're specifically.
True.
But right now, the last economic median price came in 7% of this time last year, higher at 735,000, and that was around 2000. Let me see my notes here. 2009 was 519, but it wasn't until, where is it?
3 years about later, I think it was, and that's what's scary.
Yeah, that's right. In 2012 was the bottom, and the median was 429,000.
Wow.
So,
and I wish I kicked myself. I wish I had, but there's that fear. You see, you just don't know. And wise people like you in the real estate business have seen the ups and downs, and your family has, and the trends of, and there's actually cycles. So
Precisely.
That's why people rent. But then you go, gosh, think of the money. I mean,
yeah, you're wasting all that money on rent when you could be reinvesting in yourself with a mortgage.
So what is the hottest area to buy right now? Is it in the area right here in Kahului?
Well,
where do you see?
It depends on how you measure. Are you measuring the highest dollar value? Are you looking for sales activity?
Sales activity.
If it's sales activity, it would be actually Central Maui, because to me, it's almost an unfortunate situation, because the people of Maui need the opportunity to live and work, but the Maui Lani area, Kahului, is actually the hottest market, one of the hottest markets in the nation for second home purchases. Yeah. So, most people are looking, and I always try to encourage owner-resident situations. But there's a lot of people who see an opportunity, and they've always wanted to be in Maui. They've been here part-time. They're selling their condo that they've been renting out for years, and they're purchasing a home to live here 6 months out of the year or something along those lines.
And then what do they do with it the other 6 months?
Unfortunately, it's usually sitting vacant. I do encourage people to rent it out. Of course, it always has to be rented out according to the laws and CC&Rs in that area.
And that's at least a month, right?
No,
it's longer?
no, it's much longer. Yeah, it's got to be at least 6 months. There are some rare situations in which you can do a month-to-month rental, but no, it has to be 6 months and a day. So in those situations, you don't want to be doing VRBO, because the county does actively search and look for those properties. And
on the ones that are like if they go to Airbnb and places like that, they look and search for those.
Oh, most definitely.
And there's some very high fines right now if you are not following those
and they've
rules.
increased those. A lot of them was as a result of some of like the Paia Inn was a big point in which people were very upset because they were skirting the rules. The fines were far less than the economic benefit associated with just continuing and doing it. And it's such a hard decision to make because there is an absolute desperate need for vacation rentals on the North Shore.
Yeah.
And really they should allow some more opportunities for people to do Airbnbs out of the homes they live in, like a B&B situation. But we see less and less people applying for those licenses. They're more difficult to get. The county is harder on those people. I have friends, clients that have actually had the county jump fences, go on their property.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Really?
So, and it's a bit of a surprise. It's not something that's normally allowed, but once they found an infraction, they're coming to ensure that things are done. It literally was a shed was too nice. It was a situation where they had a shed that was his office, and it was had a Murphy bed that was put away, and because they have to meet the B&B license rules, they had to shrink it because he incorporated a little shed area into it and come to the current conforming guidelines. They did that, but they had checkup after checkup. And so, you want to really make sure you meet those current rules and that you work with the county and your neighbors to ensure that you're following those rules, that you're not annoying, that you're not becoming, a nuisance, and at the same time, benefiting and filling a need, and helping,
it's a fine line,
create jobs.
And I was always wondering about this when these changes came. Is that now going to affect people buying an extra home?
Absolutely. Now, right now, you are not allowed to apply for a TVR, a transient vacation rental license, unless you've owned the property for 5 years.
Wow.
But now that is separate from a B&B licenses. Those are different rules associated with it. B&B, you actually have to live in the property. And the B&B license is really meant to benefit the people of Maui, and there's lots of situations where, somebody wants to gain a little bit of an additional income. And it's nice because it gets a rare opportunity for people that are visiting Maui to connect to the community in a way that there is really no other opportunity. So people like to create it. And I've had clients that have bed and breakfast licenses. I actually have, 808 Kupalau, which is a Maui Meadows. It's one of the few that have a B&B license. And if somebody was going to go in to purchase that, they are unable to transfer that license. So there is no transferring of either TVR licenses or B&B licenses.
Oh my, I did not know.
No, yeah, correct. So, but the house has always been, set up for that because it's just him and her and her husband, and they've been doing it for years. And it is a fabulous little area, and they've made lifelong friends. They've got a good sustainable income, and it's a beautiful property with great ocean views at the top of Maui Meadows. But, you definitely want to meet the guidelines, and that's one of the things their house does in spades is everything is permitted, everything is conforming, and that's a rarity on Maui. I mean, most homes I go into, there's always going to be a little something, a converted garage or, a bathroom that was added, and that was one of those rare situations. And if you're going to be doing something and applying for a special license like a B&B, you want to make sure that every T is crossed, every I is dotted.
And be friends with your neighbors.
Most definitely. And they are. They're wonderful. And,
So the area that used to be the hottest, I think, wasn't that Kihei before? Wasn't Kihei the
and
hottest
actually,
area?
one of the things is people, when I'm talking to them, and I serve the entire island with the exception of Hana, I refer out to agents in that area that have the specialty. I have sold out in Hana before, but it's a unique animal, and you do not want to mess with that area unless you understand the cultures of,
Yes.
in there. So it's important that the cultural
Values.
idiosyncrasies and values are met.
Absolutely, or else you will pay the price.
Absolutely, 100%. And I always want to make sure that people understand that before they. And the one property I did sell out in Hana, it's almost like I'm trying to talk them out of it, and I'm saying, hey, you got to make sure you understand it. And I was happy to help them buy a place in Hana because they were not trying to change it. They were literally going out there so that they could do habitat restoration to, she was cutting a lot of the inkberries away and the potato vines that were growing and reestablishing the native plants. And it's beautiful what they've done to the properties. 5 acres out there.
Wow.
And it's their passion. So, I mean, it's one of those rare opportunities where somebody is like just a perfect fit for the culture.
Well, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Clint Hansen, the Maui Real Estate Radio Show. And Clint, you come with such a, it's almost in your DNA because your mother and your father were doing real estate, and now you know so much. And it's interesting because you're very good on all kinds of aspects of it because you know so much, but you're also excellent in statistics.
Oh, thank you.
And I've noticed this, that you're really good with statistics, and I want to be able to lead you back and not lead you astray from this very important topic we're talking about. Where do you buy? People
or
come.
when do you buy?
That's another good
and
question.
There is no magic, there's no crystal ball. There's a lot of outside influences that can happen, with the way our trade policies are going or negative inputs to, the economic cycle can make vast changes. And, we have some serious, concerns, but most of the economic indicators are very positive. We're entering what's called the Goldilocks zone, where it's running almost parallel to inflation. So the property values are increasing, and there's less swings associated with it, the ups and downs of value. I mean, that being said, we're probably going to hit a ceiling around 2021, most likely closer to 2021, is that affordability shrinks and shrinks. There is a big chunk of buyers, though, that have been fence sitting for a long time. It's not the baby boomer market anymore. There's a lot of millennials that, are having babies and they need a place to live. And that's very difficult to do on Maui because the prices are dramatically higher. We've actually moved toward balance. That's the thing that people, fail to realize. They see these prices, but if you look at it nationally and locally, we're riding right along that line of the expanding at the same rate as the economy.
And it seems in the past Maui has had its own set of rules and its own swings, and
yes, that's very true.
And it's interesting now that you see that coming more into line. And that's an interesting trend because before it was like, well, what's happening in the rest of the country doesn't affect us here, and it seems like now maybe that is the case.
Yeah. So for the recent 2019 statistics, we have those continued drops in inventory and increases in median prices. The prices for median homes increased almost 7%, and this is actually just recently mentioned, at $735,000. There was a 16.8% drop in the total number of closed sales year to date for 2019, which begs that question if we've reached the top of the market in terms of prices.
Or if it's because of the fact of the second home problem of being able to rent out or do a vacation rental.
It really comes down to the availability of inventory. There is such a, competition and so few homes. I mean, we haven't had property inventory levels in the nation this low in a generation.
Really?
I mean, we're talking 20 years plus since there's been, availability. And there's just not a lot of building, and there's a lot of outside influences as a result of that. Cost of building has gone up, administrative costs have gone up, permitting, all that plays into, whether or not you're going to buy existing.
And is it because maybe you're making enough money to cover your mortgage and then some by the rents because the rents have gone up so high? Does that play a factor in it at all?
Well, actually, it's interesting that you say that. It's not so much that. A lot of people did, at the bottom of the market when they were literally 3.25%, interest rate. They were purchasing properties then, and as opposed to owning a property for 4.5 years and selling it, moving to a new location, the average life of a homeowner is closer to 8 years, 9 years, where they're deciding to keep the property. And, when are they ever going to get an interest rate that low? It's never going to happen. I mean, if you look at the history of mortgage rates, I mean, people are still buying it when it was 8%. Back in the
I remember
8%.
Right, that's
it's
me.
crazy.
Yeah.
It's twice what we are right now. And it was at 10%, and what in the 1980s we were at 18%. It was ridiculous. And so people, especially the younger generation, fails to realize that the price of a loan is just so low right now. And it's most likely that over the next several years that the rates are going to be raising. And it's just this, it's such an incredibly rare opportunity to get money cheap right now. And, you know, it is somewhat difficult, which is good. You know, it ensures the health of the economy. We don't want that same
To be pre-qualified
subprice.
and be able to make sure you can really afford it.
Absolutely. I mean, the subprime crisis was a massive hit to the economy.
Yeah.
You know, they were giving away money with an extra 5%. They're like, oh, you know, forget about it. You can have that, you know, 5%, 105% loan where they're going to just say, oh, you know, your first mortgage payment isn't included, you know, and it was ridiculous. It was a bad idea. And they should loosen some of the restrictions associated or some of the regulations. But hopefully we never get back to where we were, where they were, you know, if you had a pulse, they were giving you money. But right now, the rates are still very low, and there's a lot of economic sanity associated with who gets that money. So if, you know, and that is, you know, other than finding a place to live and where you want to live, the very first thing you should do is talk to a lender. So back to my spiel associated with current inventory levels. You know, those laws of when inventory has been dropping and there's been less sales, and those less sales are direct results of it being harder and harder and harder to find a property. And a lot of these are creating what's called buyer fatigue. You know, years of bidding and losing out on trying to find a property. And, you know, there's a lot of pent-up demand, And, you know, many people are just actually choosing to leave Maui as a result and go purchase in other places. And that's, you know, totally understandable because the affordability is much better, you know, unless it's California and one of the city areas. But, you know, a lot of people are moving up to Oregon and Washington, and they're, you know, for the difference, it's next to nothing. You know, the average income's a little bit less there, but the disparity between it.
The weather.
And that's why people are buying here. Our population, though, is dropping on Maui. It's actually a second consecutive year in a row.
Wow.
And it comes
I
down
had
to
not
that cost
heard
of
that
living.
until you mentioned that. I'm shocked at that. I never would have guessed that the population is dropping.
It is. It's really unfortunate. And, you know, we have a demand of about 1,000 homes a year just to create those homes, and we only create about 400 homes a year. We have a roughly, you know, 10 to 15,000 home shortfall on the island of Maui.
Wow.
And, you know, with those laws of supply and demand, it typically dictate the pricing. And
that means the prices go up since you have less inventory.
And supplies have dropped to their lowest levels in over a decade. Really more than two. The health of the market is typically measured in those terms of either a neutral market, a buyer's market, or a seller's market. A neutral market is when it's at the 6 month, and a seller's market being anything below that 6 month availability of inventory, and the buyer market anything above.
Explain to people what 6 month availability of inventory. I'm not sure of what that means. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're just going to magically pretend that nothing else is going to be coming onto the market. And what that means is the current inventory level. Say there's 100 homes and there is 20 purchases per month. So that means there's 5 months of inventory because after 5 months, there'll be nothing left. Of course, there's things coming onto the market, but it's a general measure of the current state of the market. And right now, we are officially in a seller's market. We're below that 6 month threshold for single family homes. Condos, it's crazy. We're at, 4.4 months of inventory.
Wow.
For single family homes, we're at 5.5 months, and it's been flat at that 5.5 months of inventory for the last 3 months.
So does that drive up the price?
Well, yeah, for supply and demand, prices will continue to go up.
And they sell faster.
Yeah, I have been noticing a reduction of days on market. We've been beating the statistics. I mean, typically the average days on market is, where's my figure here? It's about 150 days.
That's not long at all.
Oh, no, it's not. Especially it is very regionally dependent on where you're looking. Wailea tends to be more. It's like 180 days.
Oh. And Central Maui less.
Yeah, Central Maui is, I think, 2.5 months of inventory. It's
Wow.
like for a single family home. Now, that disparity, well, first let me just say a little bit about what we've been doing for our listings. We've been getting accepted offers and usually beating the comps. You know, when we sold a Lock A, that was set the new level for the neighborhood. When we sold the 3 Legends properties, each of those are either pending, you know, at or above the comps, and our sold was also sold above the comps. And the reason we're able to accomplish that is we really work towards having the property show at its best, staging it, professional photographs, drone shots, which can be a very difficult thing associated to do in Kahului because there's FAA rules. You got anything within 5 miles, there's totally different altitude restrictions, and I am one of the very rare agents that has his FAA 107 license. So I am able to legally fly for commercial purposes. And it's a nice little, you know, advantage that I have over some of the other agents.
Have drone will travel.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the difficulties. I mean, just simply to get a drone pilot, it's like, are you going to drop an extra $1,200 to get those specialty photos and videos?
Not unless it's a multi-million-dollar home.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I'm able to do for, you know, whether it's a more affordable condo or a home or anything along those lines.
But you know what we haven't mentioned? We haven't mentioned upcountry at all. We've talked about Kihei and Central Maui. We haven't also talked about...
one of the things I wanted to just talk about is generally why people choose different areas. And initially, a ways back, we were talking about health as being one of those.
That's true.
Single-family homes. They want those single-family homes, but the health is also the vicinity to the hospital. Say they're ailing. We have one of the best cardiovascular and heart clinics in the nation, or one of the top. So if somebody has heart conditions, a lot of people are happy to know that they are within a very short, you know, drive to the hospital or an ambulance ride. So a lot of people are choosing to be, you know, Central Maui for that situation. You know, work. A lot of people commute to the west side. There's a very, very small availability of properties out there and huge number of people that commute out of there. It's one of the biggest issues with infrastructure that the west side is facing right now. So there's a big desirability for property, and it's why the average home over on the west side is dramatically higher than anywhere else. And in addition to that, people that are coming here for retirement are often purchasing as a result of, you know, their hobbies. Say they're foodies, you know, say they want the resort lifestyle, say they want, you know, golf. You know, even though, you know, pretty much every town has a golf course here. It just depends on the level at which you want to play. You know, hobbies includes, you know, everything from diving, stand-up paddling, surfing. My personal hobby is paintball. So I end up finding myself traveling to the paintball field on a regular basis.
And where's that?
That's out in Olawalu.
Okay.
You know, it's a little undeveloped area with the general store out there and Leota's, and I mean, it's just lots of childhood memories, and it's nice, you know, going out to the paintball field. It's pretty fun. My personal sport, and it has 4,500 square feet of tree fort that incorporates 50 different trees, so it's like an Ewok village. So I try to go out there, and sometimes I'm playing the more competitive, or, you know, other times I'm, you know, doing little single shots, and when I'm playing with more recreational. I actually prefer the recreational because I like to take it easy. Getting a little old, you know. So, but other hobbies include kiteboarding and, you know, surfing, hiking. But most of the retirees that are coming out here are choosing to purchase, you know, in walking communities, or they want to be foodies, you know, and be most of towards the resort because that's typically what they know. They want to be here for sunshine. And one of the things that, you know, Maui has an abundance of, you know, being along the equator, is sunshine. And, you know, Kihei, Wailea, Makena, you know, as well as Lahaina. Lahaina stands for Land of the Merciless Sun. So it is a huge draw to people to be in those dry areas. You know, most people don't realize this, but Maui is along the equatorial desert of the world, the same as the Mojave, same as the Sahara.
Didn't realize that it was the same as that.
Exactly. The only reason we have great rainfall out here is the fact that we have moist, warm air coming off the ocean on those consistent trade winds. Those trade winds hit the mountain, they condense, and then they form clouds, and then you have on the North Shore that consistent precipitous rain that people have come to know and love. A lot of people come to Maui and they don't want that. You They want to be where it's dry and, where the weather's consistent. And there's a lot more inconsistency on those parts of the island. And of course, it really depends on the grade and the altitude on how much rain. Like if you're along the coast, most people don't realize this. If you're right on the ocean, out in Haiku, it's dramatically different when you're on the opposite side of the Hana Highway. Like the amount of rain that's up the hill compared to the very bottom is dramatic. Like you can literally see the clouds forming over your head. That when you get to the low-lying areas, when you're getting to Sprecklesville, toward the Maui Country Club, it rains considerably less there. It still is on that little bit of rainy belt, but you can see it. You look at any aerial map, and as that wind, that consistent trade wind comes, it condenses when it hits those high-pressure areas. And I mean, Pukalani, hole in the heavens,
yes, exactly,
is that point at which, the line opens up, that altitude or that pressure level drops. So, I mean, a lot of people who know Maui, that live on Maui, they love upcountry. I mean, that whole Kula area, they want to be there because it is, some of the perfect, Goldilocks area for weather. It's not too cool. It's not too hot. It's not dry. It's not wet. And
you have areas that you can have a few acres.
Exactly.
And it's country
definitely
style living.
Yeah, precisely, but we want to keep the country. We don't want to overdevelop it. And that's a really tight balance that the county has to work on issuing licenses and things of that nature.
But the only drawback is the time it takes if you are going to work, especially if you work up in Lahaina, Kaanapali. And there are people that do it still, but they can spend 45 minutes an hour, depending on traffic, more.
Yep.
And that's, I think, sometimes why people do decide, even though they've lived up country, they're getting older, they go, I'm getting tired of doing this all this driving, right? And the cost of gas has gone up.
It really depends on where you are in up country, too, because a Kula area is not too much further from, that central Kahului area. So it depends on where your job is.
Yeah.
A lot of people are working at home. A lot of people want to have, the farm lifestyle. So there might be, further out towards Ulapalakua. It's just hard to make a living in the farming community. I mean, Pono...
Not as many new homes, though. The homes are older.
Correct, yeah.
Upcountry.
There are some new properties and new developments that are happening.
I saw one up off going up in Pukalani on the right side there, all those new homes
so
going on?
by Five Trees they have right down
there.
So that's Kualono. We actually have a lot there. It's they're good size too. They're 0.41 of an acre.
Wow.
And I mean, they range in size. They range in price from there's one that's closer to the road noise, so it's like 360,000. Or if you want a prime view lot, you're going to be closer to 500,000. So
that's
I mean,
not bad at all.
Also, it's gated. Most people don't realize it. There's very few.
They put the
gated.
landscaping there, and it's not bad gated. I mean, it's beautiful
It's
stone
all
walls.
Plantation style. It feels like old Hawaii
I'm shocked
too,
those
which
prices
is nice.
are those. I would have guessed those are $600,000 to $700,000
for the lots. Yeah, they released them all, and I was anticipating, my wife and I, because our daughters go to school in upcountry, and we make the commute from Kihei every day. We're one of those people that are causing the problems with traffic, so we apologize for that. And we're trying to, live communally as we can, and we thought of purchasing in that particular place.
So what are there's some homes built. What are the built homes going for?
Up to $1 million actually, and over. So we're usually around 1.1 to 1.3. Of course, they're only just starting to get into the build cycle right now. So it's going to be interesting to see how that
going
unfolds.
fast, though.
It is, and there's fewer and fewer opportunities to purchase and build. And that lot, I mean, it's great. It has ocean views. You're in a gated neighborhood, and
they must have certain restrictions as far as what you can build there. There must be certain.
Yeah, you have a single-family home style. It's R1 zone, so it goes along with that.
So they can contact you. We haven't mentioned that. I mean, we're halfway through the show.
Yeah. You
More
can
than
go
halfway through
there's
the show.
a couple of things. My phone number, my cell phone number is 808-280-2764. That's 808-280-2764. You can text me. That's one of the best ways to communicate with me. You can call. Email is always great, which is my name and my lucky number, Clint Hansen, 33 at Gmail. That's CLINTHANSEN 33@gmail.com. But most people find us through our website, MauiRealEstate.net. It is one of the top websites.
Good site.
Oh, we have so many real estate agents that actually use our website. It's kind of funny. They're referring their clients to use us, and it benefits us wildly because whenever we get a listing, our listings get prime position. So, and their viewership goes up 10 times compared to anything else that's listed out there. So it benefits us to have a website that is so user-friendly, that is sought after. If you're looking at condos, they have push button statistics that will give you information for the last 3 years, 5 years, 8 years, as far back as the MLS goes. And it has been just a wonderful asset since we've been around since 1997. My brother actually created it.
Really?
Yeah, Daryl Hansen he's does help us out every once in a while with the website, but we have other webmasters at this time. And he now does Pacific Energy, so shout out to Pacific Energy. Daryl Hansen, he's one of the best solar installers on the island. He is really, he started it as a nonprofit.
Really?
He believed in renewable energy to the point where he was able to put his own money into it as a side gig and being a consultant and advisor because, back in the day, what's this thing called solar? How do we do it? Before batteries were readily available, he was actually creating custom systems so people could be out in the Haiku area when it's, you're going to drop a pole for 180,000 and put 10 of them up. No, you're going to create a solar system. So, he was creating off-grid and one of the places when Tesla batteries weren't around. Fortunately, Tesla does exist, and the battery systems are so much easier to use. And he does have a commercial space, so Tesla regularly drops off batteries at his place.
Wow.
There is a backlog order for those things, but they do add great value to the home, but mostly for the homeowner. Because
the
cost of electricity
in
is
the homes
ridiculous
now. Because my average cost is like $283 a month, and I don't use air conditioning in the summer because it's too freaking expensive.
It is, yeah.
I've done it before, and all of a sudden it's like, what do you mean $600? Well, it was a hot day, left. Or if you try to use a pool, heat the pool, good luck. That lasted like one time,
I have a dinosaur of an air conditioner. So during the winter, when we weren't using it, we were hitting about $700 a month in electrical costs.
Not.
Yeah. So
Not.
when I got...
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, it was. And when we were in the summer, it was... And we're talking rarely using it. And then during the summer, when we were home, we were turning on the air conditioning, and we were at almost $1,100 per month.
That's terrible.
We put in a 40-panel system, and it's just almost three and a half years that it paid for itself.
Wow.
And it was one of the wisest investments.
Isn't it one of
we've
the
ever
things
made.
people ask now when they decide if they're going to buy a home? They want to know. That's a huge selling point.
And make sure that if you are going to be doing a lease system, get a second loan, a mortgage, something along that to buy it. Don't lease it, because a lot of those actually are a negative value associated with purchasing the property, not a positive. So, when you go to a
I
lease
wouldn't
system...
have thought of that. Let's make that clear, because that was just a point I'd never thought of. So when you go to buy a home, you want to ask if the home is actually owned.
Solar as opposed to leased solar.
Because then you take on the lease, and that's an additional cost that you have to pay.
Yeah, if you're going to be paying off the lease associated with the panels,
Hadn't thought of
normally
that.
it's about $1,000 when you own it per panel, $1,000 per panel. Now, if it's a lease system, it can be $2,000 or $3,000 per panel. It
No.
depends on your lease program, how you sign it up, if you
I
redid
had
it.
never considered
Yeah,
that.
no, it's a pretty bad situation. So you want to make sure you're getting a loan. You don't want to be, doing those leases. But getting back to where
Yeah.
you want to buy on the island.
Yes.
So hobbies are a big one.
Yeah.
If you look at the North Shore, a lot of people do not want to live out there because they're worried about the rain. But the young, youthful, active people
Yes.
of Maui are out there in droves.
Yes.
I mean, it's kind of funny. You have...
Well, you see it in Paia.
Yeah, it's you can see the hippies rubbing shoulder with the billionaire yuppies. It's kind of an interesting culture that they have going on.
Yeah.
And I love it. It's a wonderful community. Bummer about the traffic, coming into there
Yeah.
every day. They really need to work on getting that bypass.
Yep.
And hopefully they won't have it coming out of Sprecklesville. I saw one of the alternate routes on one of the old roads. That back road that goes toward the airport.
Yeah.
There's a road that literally goes and pretty much is already in existence. So hopefully the county switches their rules or switches their
Yes.
direction and puts that road in there, and then we can alleviate a lot of that congestion. Infrastructure is one of the biggest issues that faces Maui today. So, and smart, intelligent, community-oriented focus groups are doing a great job of raising awareness with the county as well as the local community on how we can develop this infrastructure. So hopefully they should make the change to bypass Paia in that way, as opposed to going down to Sprecklesville where the traffic already is. If we can bypass that system, it would be so much more high.
When you have a new client, these are things you need to know. You ask what their hobbies are.
Yep.
About the health situation.
What they're really looking
priorities are in
accommodate.
that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the factor of money.
Oh,
Because,
most definitely.
because if we
That's
just said
number
it,
one.
Pakanapali and some of those areas can be rather, and Wailea is a factor for finances as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that does leave you with a pretty honed in idea
Yep.
of what to show people.
And what kind of community they're looking for too. A lot of people don't realize this, but Wailea kind of lacks a bit of community. They don't have a central club you can go to unless you're playing tennis. That's pretty much it. Kapalua is wonderful. I mean, they have a golf club there that's integrated with tennis and vehicle travel. They have there are negatives associated with the Kapalua area. There are positives, but one of the really big positives is that community that you can get. Also with Sprecklesville, you've got a great sense of community out there. Maui Lani area is fantastic way they're walking paths and golf courses, and I mean Pukalani, Makawao, they have this really individual personalities of these towns.
True, yeah.
You get out to the open country of Kula, and it's open and arid, and it's more independent style living, where you have farming or gentleman farming style communities. So it really depends on the sense of community that you want to be going to. And most people don't realize that about Wailea is there's not really a central club out there. You got to be a lot more independent. So it's kind of hard to plug in to a set of friends. Your first 6 months out of here are usually great. Your second 6 months living out here, if you're not already from here with built-in friends, is a little lonely. So I often encourage people to, join canoe clubs and activity clubs and anything you can incorporate the community and your personal interests that bring people together, and there's just not something ready built out there in Wailea. Of course, McKenna is a completely different animal, but that's so far beyond most people's price point, especially the people of Maui, that it pulls for the billionaire status, the 100 millionaire status.
Seriously.
So, yeah, absolutely. They're really doing low density purchases, which is great for Maui's infrastructure. It's great for our taxes because you have more people contributing to the tax with less people driving around, consuming less resources, but adding more to the economy, which is a very big plus.
So it's a billionaires boys club out there.
It almost, it is. Well, boys and girls. There's some
yes.
really strong independent women out there that are very independently wealthy. And the McKenna community is a diamond. I mean, it's fabulous, but it's a rare place that very few people can afford.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. It's since the 70s has been a community of 1,800 acres that they were planning on developing. They were going to be expanding out the hotel.
Yeah.
Maui is not minded towards development. They want to keep it as small and communal as possible. And even though that larger, envelope was envisioned for the community plan, they have gotten through and gotten approvals much quicker as opposed to the embattled process by just lowering that envelope. So, and by lowering that envelope and the number of properties that are built, they're able to raise the prices, and people are willing to pay it because they get that distance, that space, and that's that sense of exclusivity that you're just not going to get anywhere else. And I've shown property. I've have buyers out there, and they're fantastic. I mean, the views and the level of manicured beauty is unmatched. I think I've seen anywhere else in the world. But it is certainly an upper echelon that I will never be able to afford. Well, hopefully one day. But Wailea is, everybody thinks is the top tier, but it's no longer true. A lot of the properties
Really?
were built out in the 1970s, 1980s, and a lot of those homes are not ready to, go. You purchase something in Wailea, oftentimes with the understanding that you're going to be doing a remodel, updating a
Really?
kitchen, you're going to be refinishing a pool, and, because there's very, very few homes out in Wailea. When there's a newer property that, has a remodel done in the last 10 years in Wailea, it's usually snatched up pretty quick. Most of the property, most of the inventory and availability out there is, 20, years old.
Good
So
point. And Maui Meadows, same thing, though.
yeah, most definitely. And people like Maui Meadows though because it's at, great views, easy to hit the highway. Wailea is just below. You don't have to deal with the association. Wonderful sense of community up there. Well, it's better that you just don't have to deal with the individual association rules. So, I mean, Maui Meadows is I've lived up in Maui Meadows for years. I currently don't. My wife doesn't like living up there because she wants more continuity associated, in those neighborhood rules. It drives me crazy. I want to be able to do whatever I want with my property. But they love, the independence. They love the ability to have that half acre where you can.
It really peaked. I sold a house there,
$500,000
$500,000 just before the market changed.
Oh.
Now it's gone up 1,500,000, 1,600,000 a place I lived up there. And again, I guess you learn over time. You hold on to a piece of property,
yeah.
And if you hold on long enough, something will come around and go up. But Maui Meadows, I didn't ever guess it would have gone up to, you can't even find many $1 million pieces of property there anymore, right? I mean, they're usually over $1 million now, aren't they?
There are definitely properties that are, closer to that $1 million price point, but they're going to be, almost vacant chunks of land.
Yeah,
they're
really?
going to have an ohana on it and not a main home. Or
Wow.
at the very worst, or at the very best, they're going to be a home that is in desperate need of a remodel, that has termite damage, need a new roof, things of that nature. There's certainly opportunities, but I mean, the price ceiling is going up in that Maui Meadows area, $2.5 million for a really nice, larger square foot
Really?
home. Now, that's going to be a lot of dependencies on that.
Wow.
I mean, is there wires? It is not a planned community the same way that Wailea is. There's not underground utilities. So the variability of value is going to depend dramatically on how much view you have, how much usable space, what your neighbors are like. I mean, neighbors is a big one. At the bottom of Maui Meadows, comparative to the top of Maui Meadows, there's actually a pretty sizable disparity in price, and that has a lot to do with how much view you have and how many cars your neighbor has out on their property, because they want to have a beautiful view. They want to make sure that they don't have somebody with a bunch of roosters next door or anything like that,
or if someone's renting out their home and has 2 or 3 people renting in a home and they're sharing it with a bunch of other people, right? It makes more cars.
There's a
and more
lot of
noise.
Businesses. It's not so much that you have like a dozen people living on the property. There are certainly rare opportunities where people are, doing that. But it oftentimes comes to people running businesses out of their property, parking a lot of vehicles or just general clutter. But it's rarer and rarer as people see these opportunities to sell their home for such an incredibly high value.
Yeah.
They're, purchasing and they're buying somewhere else outside of Maui Meadows. It's this gentrification of the area, as you
Interesting.
So, and that weather, I mean, Maui Meadows is that sought after dry spot that people want to be in. There's, not a lot of land that they're releasing to be developed. So, there's kind of more competition for those drier, more consistent weather situations. And the reason I love Maui Meadows, other than the independence, is I like the fact that it's just that much cooler than the rest of Kihei. You don't realize it, but I actually jokingly refer to it as a lower Ulapalakua. Because you get towards the top of Maui Meadows, and it's nice and cool. It's like a 2 to 3 degree temperature drop. You get more regular breezes. You kind of just get that tail end of the McKenna cloud that comes over and cools you off. So I love it up there. It's one of my special, places in my heart. But my wife, she wants to be in areas that have a more sense of continuity, and, happy wife, happy life.
So we've got about 6 or 7 minutes left here. And winding it up, I mean, it sounds like there's so many factors as a real estate person you have to really take into consideration. And I guess a lot of times when people are coming, they count on you to kind of know some of these things, don't they?
Absolutely, and we have a lot of people that count on us for a place to find them to purchase as well as to sell. So the thing is when it comes to selling a property, there's more work, associated than when a buyer. I have years or decades of, knowledge that has been built in that has helped me learn what, a person wants, where they're going to go. But everything we do is, so hyper focused depending on our individual client needs, and selling is a whole different thing. So I will definitely go into selling at the next opportunity when we meet next week. That'll be broadcasting at 11:10 a.m. KAOI Ready Group. That is also 98.7 FM, 96.7 FM, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Mondays. And you can also find us at MauiRealEstateRadio.com. I like to produce videos on a regular basis. You probably saw me there first. I like to get those out there and inform the community. And
you can
thank
go
you,
to
Cindy.
Maui.
MauiRealEstate.net. And people know us already there. The Hansen Ohana is like,
Thank you so much, Clint. Aloha.
Aloha.